In 2014, cartel boss Javier Ortega, known as El Fantasma, the Ghost, vanished during a massive DEA raid. No body, no leads, no mistakes, just smoke and silence. For 2 years, the world thought he was dead, until he walked into a dusty Arizona diner and sat in booth 5. There he met Anna Cruz, a single mother, waitress, and the last person he'd ever suspect. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't a spy. But what she noticed would bring down the drug lord the world had forgotten. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your location in the comments. We love seeing where you're watching from. Javier Ortega was not a name people said out loud. In the streets, people called him El Fantasma, the Ghost. He earned that name because no one ever saw him, but everyone knew what he did. Ortega was one of the biggest drug lords in Mexico, running a billion-dollar operation from the shadows. His face was rarely caught on camera, and his voice was never recorded. He didn't show off his power with gold or loud cars. Instead, he stayed quiet, careful, and deadly. His cartel moved cocaine, heroin, and meth across the US border with skill. His men were loyal. His enemies feared him. People who betrayed him disappeared. By 2014, he had become more than just a criminal. He was a mystery. Even the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, had no clear picture of what he looked like. But that year, they made a plan to catch him once and for all. The DEA spent months watching Ortega's cartel. They tracked trucks, listened to phone calls, and followed anyone who might lead them to him. They believed he was hiding near the Texas-Mexico border, operating from an old warehouse outside a small desert town. It wasn't just any warehouse. It was suspected to be the heart of Ortega's operation. Inside, they thought, were drugs, weapons, and maybe even Ortega himself. The DEA knew they only had one chance. They gathered more than 60 agents from across different states, including teams from the FBI and Border Patrol. The plan was simple but dangerous. Surround the warehouse before sunrise, go in fast, and catch Ortega alive. They trained for weeks and kept everything secret. Only the top people knew when it would happen. At 5 a.m. on a cool April morning in 2014, the raid began. Trucks rolled in. Agents moved into place. What happened next shocked everyone. The raid went wrong within minutes. As the agents stormed the building, explosions shook the ground. Gunfire echoed through the early morning light. Thick clouds of smoke filled the warehouse, making it hard to see or breathe. Some agents wore gas masks, but not everyone had time to put them on. Radios stopped working. Calls for help were lost in static. It was chaos. Inside, they found weapons and empty crates, but the drugs were already gone. Whoever had been there had left fast, too fast. As more agents pushed in, parts of the warehouse caught fire. A few men were captured, but they were low-level workers. No sign of Ortega. No photos. No fingerprints. No escape tunnel. No broken windows. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. After the fire was put out, teams searched every inch. Still, Ortega was gone. Just like his name, a ghost. For a few hours, some believed he had died in the fire, burned in the back rooms, maybe hidden under the rubble. But that idea didn't last long. The bodies found weren't his. None of them matched Ortega's description. And no personal items were recovered. No phone. No ID. No weapons used by him. Even his close men were missing. Soon, agents started to wonder if he had ever been there at all. But they had been sure. They had trusted their intel. Someone had tipped them off. Someone close to Ortega. So how did he know? That question spread through the DEA offices quickly. The operation had been top secret. Only a few trusted agents knew the exact time and place. The idea that someone inside the DEA could be working for Ortega became very real. But with no proof, the agency could only guess. And while they searched for answers, Ortega disappeared. It didn't take long for the rumors to start. In the dark corners of cartel-controlled towns, people whispered that El Fantasma was still alive. A truck driver said he saw a man matching Ortega's description crossing the border 2 nights before the raid. A small-time dealer claimed Ortega had warned his men a week earlier. Nothing could be confirmed, but the whispers kept growing. Some believed he was hiding in South America. Others thought he had changed his face through surgery. One rumor said he had been flown out by helicopter before the raid even began. The DEA heard all of it, but none of the stories helped. Ortega had left behind no trail. His accounts were emptied. His phones were destroyed. Every building linked to him was abandoned. It was as if he had erased himself completely. For law enforcement, it was both a failure and a mystery, one that would haunt them. The media got hold of the story within a day. Drug kingpin escapes in fiery raid, read one headline. Ghost drug lord lives up to his name, said another. News channels ran the story for weeks. They showed maps, old photos, and shaky video clips from the raid. But the truth was, no one knew anything for sure. Ortega had become more than a criminal. He was now a legend. Victims' families wanted justice. Some had lost loved ones to overdoses from drugs his cartel had sold. Others had been caught in cartel violence along the border. They demanded answers. Why had the DEA failed? How could such a dangerous man walk away? The public wanted someone to blame. But the agents were silent. Behind closed doors, internal investigators looked into the operation. Files were reviewed. Radios were tested. Every step was questioned. But no one could explain how the raid had failed so badly. Inside the DEA, trust began to crack. Some agents were removed from the case. Others were told not to speak to the press. A few even left the agency. Whispers of a mole, someone feeding Ortega information, wouldn't go away. Every conversation was watched. Every phone call monitored. But nothing solid was found. The deeper they looked, the colder the trail got. Ortega had covered his tracks perfectly. The agency decided to pause the case, at least in public. Resources were moved to other threats. The file was marked active, no leads. But off the record, a few agents refused to let it go. They believed Ortega was still in the country, hiding, waiting, watching. They kept digging, hoping for one mistake. But weeks passed, then months, then years, and still nothing. It was like chasing smoke. Javier Ortega had vanished, and the world slowly started to forget. But Ortega hadn't gone far. He was watching, listening, living in the shadows. While the world thought he was dead or hiding in some jungle, he had taken on a new name and a quiet life. No more mansions. No more meetings. Just a small apartment, simple clothes, and a new identity. He moved like a man trying to disappear, and for a while, he succeeded. Even the remaining members of his cartel didn't know where he was. Some believed he had abandoned them. Others thought he was still in charge, speaking through coded messages. Violence in the cartel increased as younger leaders fought for power. Ortega stayed silent. He didn't reach out. He didn't interfere. But deep down, he knew the peace wouldn't last forever. The DEA might have stopped looking, but danger has a way of finding you, even in the quietest places. And for Ortega, that danger was wearing an apron. Anna Cruz was 26 years old and lived a quiet life in a small border town in southern Arizona. The town wasn't big or famous. It sat on a dusty highway, surrounded by dry land, old buildings, and long-forgotten motels. Some people lived there their whole lives. Others just passed through. Anna was one of the few still trying to hold things together. She had 2 young children, both under the age of 10, and worked double shifts as a waitress at a diner called Maria's Stop-In. It wasn't fancy. The floors creaked, the booths were cracked, and the ceiling fans made a soft humming noise all day. But it was one of the only places open early in the morning and late at night. Truck drivers, travelers, and border patrol agents all came and went. Anna had learned to smile, pour coffee, and keep her head down. Life wasn't easy, but it was routine. Every morning, Anna left her small apartment before sunrise. She walked 2 blocks to the diner, keys in hand, tired from the night before. Her kids stayed with her mother while she worked. Bills were always tight, and tips weren't great, but she managed. She had been working at Maria's Stop-In for almost 4 years. In that time, she had seen all kinds of customers. Some were kind, others rude. Some came in for breakfast, Others just needed a place to rest. Faces changed often, especially since the diner sat so close to the border highway. A lot of people just wanted food and silence. Anna didn't ask questions. She kept her eyes on the plates and listened only when needed. Most customers didn't notice her. She didn't mind. But that changed one Thursday morning in early May. A new customer walked in, and something about him made her stop and look twice. He arrived just after 7 a.m. The bell above the diner door gave a soft ring as he stepped inside. He wasn't like the usual crowd. While most men wore baseball caps and dusty boots, this man was sharply dressed. Not in a fancy way, but clean and careful. His shirt was tucked in. His pants were pressed. His shoes were polished. He wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy outside. He had a short beard and gray in his hair. Anna guessed he was maybe in his late 50s. He didn't speak at first. He looked around slowly, then chose the booth farthest from the windows. When Anna brought him a menu, he gave a small nod and ordered without looking up. Black coffee, 2 eggs, toast, no butter. His voice was calm and clear, but had a slight accent. Spanish, maybe. Anna didn't think much of it that first morning. But he came back. Every Thursday, at the same time, the man returned. Same clothes, same booth, same order. He never smiled, never asked for anything special. He always paid in cash and left the exact amount plus a $5 tip. It wasn't much, but it was more than most gave. Anna started to take notice. Not just because of the habit, but because of the small things that didn't add up. For one, he never made eye contact. When she spoke to him, he kept his eyes on the table. He didn't read the newspaper or look at his phone. In fact, she never once saw him use a phone, not even a flip phone. Most people scrolled while they waited, but not him. He just sat there, quiet and still, like he was waiting for something. Anna didn't say anything, but she watched more closely. Something about him felt off. Not dangerous, just unusual. After his 4th visit, she noticed something else. A faded burn scar on his left forearm, barely visible under his sleeve. It was shaped like a half moon and looked old. Not the kind of scar from a kitchen accident. Maybe something bigger, a fire or explosion. She also noticed the watch he wore. It wasn't a normal watch. It looked like something a soldier might wear, thick, black, and worn out. The numbers were scratched, and the strap was military green. He always glanced at it before he stood up, like he was keeping to a strict schedule. Another thing stood out. Every time someone entered the diner, he would turn slightly and scan the door, then go back to stillness. Anna had seen nervous people before, people on the run, people hiding. But this man didn't seem scared. He seemed trained. Like watching exits was second nature. That's when her curiosity began to grow. One Thursday, while clearing his table, Anna heard him mutter something in Spanish. It was quiet, like he was talking to himself. She only caught a few words: La Frontera, Paquits, Limpio. Her heart skipped. Her father, who had passed away when she was a teenager, had worked border patrol for over 20 years. He used to talk about smugglers and how they used coded language. She remembered some of those phrases. What the man said, it wasn't just random Spanish. It sounded like slang used in border crossings. La Frontera meant the border. Paquits meant packages, which sometimes referred to drug shipments. Limpio meant clean, often used when a shipment had passed safely. Anna stood there for a second, unsure if she had heard right. When she looked at him, he was already putting on his coat. He left the money on the table, nodded once, and walked out the door, just like always. That night, the diner was slow. A few truckers came in, but nothing busy. After closing time, Anna stayed back to mop the floor and clean behind the counter. Her coworker had already left, and the manager was in the office counting tips. As she wiped the front counter, She dropped her cloth behind the register. When she bent down to grab it, her hand brushed against something. It was thin and slightly crumpled. She pulled it out, a piece of old newspaper folded twice. Curious, she opened it. The headline at the top made her stop breathing for a moment. It read, "Cartel Ghost Escapes Massive Raid." There was a grainy black and white photo under the title. A man's face, half in shadow, looked back at her. The image was blurry, but the beard, the jawline, the shape of the eyes, they looked like him. The man who sat in booth 5 every Thursday. Anna stared at the paper, her hands shaking. She read the first few lines. It talked about a drug lord named Javier Ortega, known as El Fantasma, the Ghost. He had escaped a DEA raid in 2014 and hadn't been seen since. Authorities thought he might be dead, but others believed he was still alive. Her eyes scanned back to the photo. It wasn't clear, but it was enough. The man in the picture looked so much like her quiet Thursday customer that it made her stomach twist. Could it be him? Could a drug lord really be hiding out in a small Arizona town, eating eggs and toast once a week? She shook her head, trying to calm down. Maybe it was just her mind playing tricks. The photo was old, grainy. It could be anyone. But deep inside, Anna felt something she hadn't felt in years, fear. She didn't tell anyone that night. Not her manager. Not her co-workers. Not even her mother. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. She took the newspaper clipping home, folded it carefully, and slid it into her journal. That night, she hardly slept. Every sound outside made her jump. She thought about her kids, asleep in the next room. What if she was right? What if this man was dangerous? What if he found out she was watching him? But another thought came. What if no one else had noticed him? What if she was the only one who had made the connection? And if he really was the missing cartel boss, what would happen if he slipped away again? Anna didn't know what to do. But something inside her said this wasn't just a strange customer. This was something bigger. And her next move could change everything. Anna couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, that blurry photo from the newspaper flashed in her mind. The scar, the beard, the cold, quiet stare. It had to be him, or someone who looked just like him. She told herself maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe she was being dramatic. But every Thursday morning, when the man walked through the door and sat in the same booth without a word, her stomach turned. She started watching him more closely. Not in a way that would raise alarm, but just enough to notice what others didn't. He always sat alone. Never spoke unless ordering. Never answered the phone, because he never had one. No texts. No calls. No scrolling. These days, everyone was on their phone. But not him. It was like he didn't exist in the digital world. For Anna, that was the first real clue that something wasn't right. Week after week, he came in like clockwork. Same order. Same clothes. Same routine. Anna started keeping small notes in her journal at home. Times. Movements. Anything odd. It felt silly at first, like she was pretending to be a detective. But each detail made the picture clearer. He always looked around before sitting down. He kept his back to the wall and eyes on the exits. He never lingered, never chatted, never stayed longer than 30 minutes. And then one morning, something changed. After finishing his breakfast, he left like usual. But as Anna cleared the table, she found something tucked between the sugar jar and the napkin holder, a brown leather wallet. It wasn't thick, just worn and folded tight. She looked around quickly. The man was already gone. She picked it up, hands shaking, unsure if she should open it. But curiosity won. What she found inside sent a chill through her. The wallet had no name, no ID card, no credit cards, nothing that could tell her who he was. Only a thin stack of $20 bills, neatly folded, and one small piece of paper, folded twice. Anna opened it slowly. The note was handwritten with blocky, careful letters. There were 2 lines of numbers, followed by what looked like odd symbols or shorthand. At first, she didn't understand it. But the numbers looked familiar, too specific to be random. Her hands trembling, she typed them into her phone's map app. Her heart skipped as the pin dropped. The coordinates led to a storage yard, about 15 miles south, right near the border. It was a quiet area, mostly empty lots and trucks. Anna had driven by it once or twice before. Nothing about it stood out, but the note made it feel dangerous. Why would someone hide that location in a wallet with no ID? That evening, after her shift, Anna sat at her kitchen table long after her kids had gone to bed. She pulled out the note again and stared at the symbols. One looked like a star, another like the letter F. Others were harder to figure out. Could they be codes? Directions? Nicknames? Her head spun with possibilities. She remembered stories her father had told her about how cartels used secret markings. They would use signs instead of names, especially when dealing with shipments or stash spots. Her chest tightened. Could this note be connected to drugs, weapons, or even people? And if the man she had been serving was really Ortega, the same Ortega who escaped a massive DEA raid years ago, could this be part of his operation? The question felt too big, too real. But Anna didn't stop there. She pulled out her laptop and typed in the name she hadn't dared to say out loud. Javier Ortega, El Fantasma. The search results flooded in. News articles, old interviews, crime reports. She clicked through pages of content, her eyes scanning for clues. One article described Ortega's escape in 2014 during a raid near the border. Another said he had run one of the largest drug rings in the Southwest. She found maps of known cartel routes, diagrams of their smuggling tactics, and even documentaries posted by crime journalists. Anna watched one video where a DEA agent explained that Ortega had disappeared without a trace, and his last known location was, her breath caught, a warehouse just a few miles from the storage yard the coordinates pointed to. She froze. It couldn't be a coincidence. She clicked back to the map. The warehouse from the 2014 raid had never been fully searched. The fire had stopped the agents. Ortega had escaped. And now, years later, a quiet man leaves a note tied to that same area. Each piece was falling into place, like a puzzle she didn't mean to solve. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't trained for this. But somehow, she was in the middle of it. Anna began collecting printouts. She made copies of articles, maps, and photos. She drew a circle around the diner, the storage yard, and the old warehouse. Everything pointed back to one terrifying truth. This man wasn't just a customer. He might be Javier Ortega, the ghost. The idea shook her. She had seen crime shows. She had read about people who got involved in cartel business and disappeared forever. But she also remembered her father's words from years ago. If you see something dangerous, say something, even if it's scary. That voice stayed in her mind. Still, the fear was growing. What if he found out she was watching? What if someone came after her family? The danger wasn't just real. It was sitting in her booth every week. She tried to act normal. When he returned the next Thursday, she smiled and took his order like nothing had changed. But inside, her heart raced. Her hands shook slightly as she poured his coffee. She looked for signs. Was he checking to see if she found the wallet? Would he say something? But he didn't. He just nodded, ate quietly, and left the money. He didn't mention the wallet. Didn't act worried. It was like he didn't care, or wanted her to find it. That thought scared her more. What if it was a test? What if he was seeing who was watching? Anna started locking her doors at night, double-checking the windows. She made sure her kids stayed close to home. She avoided telling anyone at the diner, not even her boss. If she was wrong, She didn't want to start rumors. But if she was right, she knew she had to be careful. Very careful. Anna's conflict grew stronger every day. Half of her wanted to walk into the police station and hand over everything, the note, the maps, the photo. But the other half feared what might happen next. What if the police didn't believe her? What if they told the wrong person? What if someone in law enforcement was connected to Ortega? She had read stories about cartel spies inside the government. Her father had warned her once, sometimes the person wearing the badge is more dangerous than the one hiding. That thought stayed with her. She didn't trust anyone. But she also couldn't stay silent. Not after what she knew. Each Thursday, the man returned, always the same. She started writing down exact times, when he entered, how long he stayed, what direction he walked when he left. Her journal filled with notes. She was no longer just curious. She was preparing. Something was coming. She could feel it. Then one morning, everything changed again. As she passed his table to refill his coffee, she heard him say something under his breath. Just a few words in Spanish, spoken slowly: La frontera, entrega final, jueves próximo. Anna froze in place. She pretended not to hear, but her mind repeated the words. The border, final delivery, next Thursday. Her heart pounded. She walked away quickly, hiding her fear. Those words meant something was about to happen. Something big. A final delivery? Could it be drugs? Guns? A smuggling run? She didn't know. But she did know that waiting any longer could be a mistake. This wasn't just about watching anymore. This was about stopping something before it was too late. She knew she couldn't do it alone. But who could she trust? That question echoed in her mind. And still, she had no answer. But one thing was clear: she wasn't just a waitress anymore. Anna stood in her kitchen that night, staring at the wall where she had pinned all the articles, maps, and notes. Her eyes traced the red lines connecting locations. She looked down at the journal filled with quiet observations. She picked up the folded note again, rereading the numbers and symbols. Her mind went back to the newspaper clipping. The same face, the same eyes. All the signs were there. She had spent weeks building this picture, and now it was complete. She was holding something too big for one person. Something people in power had tried and failed to uncover. Something the DEA would pay anything to have. She had found the ghost. She had cracked the silence. The only question left was what she would do with it. And deep down, Anna Cruz already knew the answer. She was about to take the first step into a world she could never walk away from. Anna Cruz had spent weeks watching, listening, and collecting clues. But after hearing the words final delivery from the man she believed was Javier Ortega, she knew it was time to act. Still, she couldn't go to just anyone. She didn't trust the police, and she had no way of reaching the DEA directly without risking everything. She needed someone outside the system, someone who knew how dangerous the cartel world could be. That's when she remembered Father Luis, the local pastor at St. Mary's Chapel. He wasn't just a priest. Years ago, her father had spoken about him. He had helped migrants escape cartel threats, smuggling routes, and violent smugglers who hunted people instead of helping them. He had seen the worst side of crime. Anna didn't go to church often anymore, but she believed Father Luis might be the one person in town who could help without judging or exposing her. That afternoon, Anna walked to the church during her break. It was a small, quiet place with cracked walls and worn wooden pews. She found Father Luis in the garden behind the chapel, watering plants and humming to himself. He looked up as she approached, his kind eyes full of warmth. "Anna Cruz," he said gently. "It's been a while." She nodded nervously, unsure how to start. They sat on a bench under the shade of a tree, and Anna slowly began to explain. She didn't give too many details at first, just that she had noticed something at the diner. A man who didn't fit. A name she had seen. Clues she had followed. Father Luis listened carefully, nodding, not interrupting. When she finally told him she believed the man was Javier Ortega, the drug lord known as El Fantasma, he went completely still. His smile faded, and for a long moment, he said nothing at all. Finally, Father Luis let out a slow breath. "If what you're saying is true," he whispered, "you're sitting on something bigger than any of us." Anna looked down at her hands. "I don't want trouble," she said quietly. "But I also can't ignore this." The priest leaned forward. "I believe you," he said. "And I know someone who might help. His name is Tom Reyes. He used to work for the DEA, but after a close call with cartel hitmen, he left and now runs private security. He's not perfect, but he knows that world. And more importantly, he's not tied to any local department." Anna agreed to meet him, though her heart was racing. The idea of talking to a former DEA agent scared her. What if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was just a scared waitress telling stories? But deep down, she knew this was the only way forward. The next evening, Anna met Tom Reyes in a quiet booth at the back of the diner after hours. The place was closed, and the lights were dim. Tom was in his early 50s, with tired eyes and a quiet way of speaking. He carried a leather folder and a small recording device. Anna brought her journal, the newspaper clipping, a printed copy of the GPS coordinates, and the photo she had taken of the man sitting in booth 5. She laid everything out on the table. Reyes listened without saying much. He flipped through the receipts, notes, and sketches Anna had made. At one point, he stopped and looked up. "You've done more work than some rookie agents I've trained," he said. Anna wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a warning. Then came the big moment. She handed him the old DEA surveillance photo of Ortega and held her breath. Reyes stared at the blurry image. Then he looked at Anna's photo of the diner man. Back and forth. Over and over. The silence stretched until he finally leaned back in his seat. "That's him," he said quietly. "That's Ortega." Anna's chest tightened. She wasn't crazy. She hadn't imagined it. But the truth felt even heavier now. Reyes rubbed his face and whispered, "He's alive, hiding in plain sight." He sat forward again. "We need to be careful. If Ortega finds out someone's onto him, he'll vanish, just like he did last time. Or worse, he might come after you." Anna felt a chill run through her body. Reyes pulled out a notepad. "You said he mentioned something about a final delivery?" Anna nodded. "He said it last Thursday. I think it's happening this week." Reyes closed his folder. "Then we don't have much time. We're going to restart the case. Quietly." Tom Reyes didn't call the DEA directly. He knew how leaks happened. Instead, he used a secure contact, someone he trusted from his old unit, a retired field agent who had access to encrypted systems. They didn't file a formal report. Not yet. They needed to confirm Ortega's identity with more evidence and find out what the final delivery meant. Reyes explained everything to Anna. "We're going to watch, record, and gather proof. Once we have enough, I'll take it straight to Washington. No middlemen. No small-town cops. No chances for Ortega to slip away again." Anna agreed, though fear was now her shadow. She didn't tell her family. She didn't tell her co-workers. Each week, Ortega returned to booth 5, and Anna served him with a calm face while her heart raced. She wore a smile and held a secret that could bring down a man who had escaped every trap before. They started small. Reyes gave Anna a small recording device, disguised as a pen, which she could clip to her apron. It recorded audio clearly and stored up to 6 hours at a time. He taught her how to transfer the files and how to signal if something went wrong. "If he acts strange, walks out suddenly, or changes his pattern, I need to know immediately," Reyes said. Anna nodded, nervous but determined. The diner, once just her workplace, had now become the front line of a secret operation. Every Thursday, she dressed carefully, put on the pen, and stepped into her role. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the key informant in an unofficial case now known by its new name, Operation Phantom. The plan was simple: collect as much as possible without raising suspicion. Then, when the time was right, the DEA would step in and make the arrest. This time, for good. Anna started listening to every word Ortega said. Most of the time, he stayed quiet. But sometimes he would speak to himself, small words in Spanish, or mumbles about schedules and deliveries. Reyes listened to the recordings every week. "He's careful," he said. "He's trained not to say too much. But he's slipping." Ortega's routine didn't change. Same booth. Same meal. Same payment in cash. But he started looking around more. His eyes rested on Anna longer. One day, he asked her if the diner had any new staff. Anna smiled and said, "No, sir. Just the usual crew." Her voice stayed calm, but inside, she panicked. Had he noticed something? Was he testing her? She told Reyes, who nodded. "We have to move quickly now. He's sensing something." But Anna still kept showing up. Even though her hands shook and her heart pounded, she knew one wrong move could end everything, or end her. Outside the diner, Reyes started doing his part. He visited the storage yard marked on the GPS note. It looked empty from the outside, but after 2 nights of watching, he saw a pattern. Unmarked trucks arriving late at night, staying only 15 minutes, and then leaving in different directions. He traced one truck to a warehouse near another border checkpoint. It was enough to prove the location was active. Reyes photographed the plates, marked the movements, and added the data to his file. "He's still running something big," Reyes said. "And he's doing it quietly." As the evidence grew, so did the risk. Reyes reached out to his DEA contact again. "We're almost ready," he said. "1 or 2 more visits, and we'll have enough to bring this to headquarters." Anna felt both relief and fear. If the operation worked, Ortega would finally be caught. But if it failed, if he got away, he would know who exposed him. Each week felt longer than the last. Anna kept her journal hidden under her mattress. She saved every recording on a USB drive hidden inside a can of flour in her kitchen. She checked her locks twice before bed. She walked her children to school and back, always watching the street. The stress wore on her, but she refused to stop. Her notes, her courage, and her silence were now part of something far bigger than she ever imagined. She had taken the first step when she found that newspaper clipping. Now, she was deep inside a case that had gone cold for years. And in just a few days, everything would come down to one final breakfast, one final moment, one final chance to stop a ghost from vanishing again. Anna Cruz stood in the back room of the diner while Tom Reyes helped her attach the wire. It was small, no larger than a matchbox, and it clipped quietly to the inside of her apron. From the outside, no one could see it. But inside, it picked up every word. Reyes showed her how to test the battery, how to stay close enough for good sound, and how to keep it hidden. Anna nodded, trying to stay calm. Her hands were shaking. She had served hundreds of meals in that apron. Now, it carried the weight of something much bigger. "You're doing something very brave," Reyes said gently. "Just stay steady and act normal." That Thursday morning, when the doorbell chimed and Ortega walked in, Anna smiled like always and led him to his booth. But this time, every word, every sound, and every breath would be recorded for the DEA. Ortega sat in his usual spot, calm as ever. He didn't know that microphones were hidden in the salt shaker, the napkin holder, and even the light above the booth. Reyes had come in earlier, pretending to fix the wiring. He wasn't just fixing anything, he was placing hidden listening devices. Ortega ordered the same meal, but this time, he spoke more than usual. He commented on the heat. He asked about a highway delay. And then, between bites of toast, he said something that made Anna freeze. "El Norte's slowing us down," he mumbled. "Too many trucks." We need smaller drops." Anna nodded like she didn't understand. But inside, she knew that El Norte meant the northern route, the US side. Reyes had warned her about coded phrases. Ortega never said drugs. Never said weapons. But terms like drops, cargo, and routes were red flags. The tape from that morning would later shock DEA agents. Each Thursday, Anna served Ortega while quietly gathering intel. The Wire picked up new details every week. Ortega mentioned late deliveries, border eyes, and cleared lanes. He never named places, but he spoke like someone still running something big. Anna acted normal, writing down the usual receipts and slipping notes under coffee cups that Reyes would collect after the shift. Each note included the time Ortega arrived, how long he stayed, and any strange words he said. Reyes passed the recordings to his contact, a retired DEA analyst who worked from a secure location. They listened, paused, rewound, and decoded. What sounded like small talk was actually key information. La neblina sobre el puente, fog over the bridge, meant delays at the checkpoint. No chase limpias, clean nights, meant successful shipments. The agents called it ghost talk, a quiet language meant to hide in plain sight. But thanks to Anna, the ghost was now being heard. By the fourth week, Reyes had enough evidence to build a detailed report. The notes, the receipts, the recordings, all pointed to Ortega running a low-key smuggling ring out of the border town. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But he was clearly still connected. Reyes drew a line across a map, connecting the diner, the storage yard, and the nighttime truck routes he had followed earlier. It all fit. But something else was changing, too. Ortega's behavior. He was no longer as calm as before. He came in later, sat more quietly, watched the door more often. One time, he even asked Anna, "Is the manager new?" Even though the manager had been there for years. His eyes scanned the room with more caution. He tapped his fingers on the table like he was counting the seconds. Anna noticed. And so did Reyes. "He's getting nervous," Reyes said. "He feels something. We need to move fast." Then came a week that scared everyone. Ortega didn't show up. The booth stayed empty. The eggs never left the kitchen. Anna kept glancing at the door, pretending not to worry. But deep down, she thought the worst. Had he figured it out? Had he left town? Had someone warned him? She told Reyes right away. He checked traffic cameras, delivery logs, and the storage yard. Nothing. 4 days, Ortega vanished, just like he had in 2014. The team waited. But no one spoke it out loud. They feared the ghost had slipped away again. Then the next Thursday, the bell rang at 7:45 a.m., and there he was. Same shirt. Same watch. Same walk. But this time, he didn't sit right away. He looked around the room longer. When he did sit, he said nothing for 10 minutes. Just stared at the table. Anna served his coffee without a word. Her hands were cold with fear. That visit was the most difficult one yet. Ortega kept watching Anna, not in a kind way, but like someone trying to read her face. He didn't order his food right away. Instead, he asked a strange question. "You ever been to Mexico, Anna?" She kept her voice steady. "Once. Long time ago with my dad." Ortega nodded slowly. "Nice place, if you know who to trust." Then he looked back at the door. That was all he said. But it was enough. Anna knew something had changed. She avoided asking any questions. No small talk. No follow-ups. Just took the order and left. That night, she told Reyes everything. He didn't hesitate. "We're out of time," he said. "We can't wait anymore." The DEA's secure contact agreed. They would fast-track the sting operation. Ortega couldn't be allowed to vanish again. And Anna? She would have to work one more shift. Just one. but it would be the most important day of her life. Because of the danger, Anna's 2 children were quietly moved to a safe house outside the city. They were told it was a small vacation. Anna packed their bags with tears in her eyes, but never told them the truth. Reyes stayed close, sleeping in his truck near the diner in case anything went wrong. Hidden agents started arriving in town, dressed as delivery drivers, travelers, and utility workers. They placed small cameras outside the diner, tracked Ortega's walking route, and checked every possible escape path. Inside the diner, new mics were placed in the chairs, the ceiling fans, and even the register. Everything was set. The final sting was ready. But it would only work if Ortega came back. If he didn't show, they'd lose everything. If he suspected something, Anna might be in danger. The tension was so high that even Reyes didn't sleep. All they could do now was wait for Thursday morning. When the sun rose that Thursday, Anna stood in front of the diner mirror fixing her hair. Her hands shook slightly as she tied her apron, feeling the small wire in place. She looked at herself and whispered, "Just one more time." She stepped outside and walked the familiar path to work, passing the same houses, the same fence, the same old billboard. Everything felt normal, but it wasn't. As she entered the diner, she saw Reyes sitting at the counter pretending to drink coffee. 2 agents she didn't know were at booth 3. A man with a newspaper by the door was watching the street. This was it. The last breakfast. Anna lit a candle near the kitchen and said a quick prayer. Then she went to her station and waited. At 7:39 a.m., the bell above the door gave a soft ring, and Ortega, calm, sharp, silent, walked in one final time. Thursday morning came like any other. The air was still cool, and the streets were quiet. But inside the small Arizona diner, everything was different. It was Sting Day, the day they had all been waiting for. Unmarked vans were parked along the side street and behind the alley. Inside them were DEA agents dressed in plain clothes, listening closely to the live feed coming from Anna's wire. Other agents were scattered across the diner, pretending to be customers. Some wore baseball caps. Others held newspapers or laptops. From the outside, the diner looked normal. But inside, it was a trap, carefully set and ready to close. Anna walked slowly to her usual spot behind the counter. Her heart pounded in her chest. The small wire hidden under her apron was already on, capturing every sound, every voice, and every moment. She took a deep breath. If all went right, this would be the day it ended. At exactly 7:39 a.m., the soft ring of the bell above the door broke the silence. Anna turned her head slowly. It was him. Miguel Herrera, the name he used, but she now knew him as Javier Ortega, the ghost who had escaped one of the biggest DEA raids in history. He looked just like before, quiet, sharp, and unreadable. But today, there was something different in his eyes. He paused at the door for a few seconds longer than usual. His gaze moved across the diner. Anna followed his line of sight as he scanned the booths, the counter, the parking lot outside the window. He was sensing something. He didn't show fear, but his movements were more careful. He sat down in booth 5 like always. Anna walked over, her legs stiff from tension. "Coffee?" she asked softly. Ortega nodded. "Black," he said, his voice calm. But everything around him was ready to explode. In the van across the street, Reyes sat with headphones pressed to his ears. "He's in," he said into the radio. "All units, eyes on." Inside the diner, agents sat silently, their hands resting close to hidden weapons. Anna poured the coffee, her hand steady even though her stomach twisted in fear. Ortega didn't touch the cup right away. He just stared out the window, watching the street. Then he leaned back and slowly reached inside his coat. Anna froze. In that one moment, time seemed to stop. Was he reaching for a phone? Or a gun? Her mind raced. She couldn't speak. Couldn't move. She took one small step back. Her body was cold all over. In the van, Reyes gave the call. Go. Now. Within seconds, the agents burst through the front and side entrances at once. The door slammed open. The window by the booth shattered. Hands up, someone shouted. Ortega stood, and the world exploded. The next few seconds were chaos. Ortega's hand came out fast, not with a phone, but with a small silver handgun. He didn't fire, but his arm was raised. Plates crashed to the ground as tables were pushed aside. Anna dove behind the counter just in time. Agents shouted from every direction. One man tackled Ortega from the side, but Ortega pushed back hard. The gun fired, one loud bang that rang through the diner, but the bullet hit nothing. No one was hurt, but the shock left the room frozen. Another agent lunged forward, grabbing Ortega's arm and twisting the weapon free. Two more pulled him down to the floor. He kicked and shouted, trying to escape, but the agents were faster. Within seconds, he was cuffed, pinned, and pulled to his feet. His coat was torn. His face was red. But he was no longer the ghost. He was now just a man, caught. Outside, news cameras captured the moment as Ortega was dragged out of the diner in handcuffs. He kept his head down, but his face was clearly seen. For the first time in years, the world would see El Fantasma in daylight. Journalists had arrived quickly, tipped off by Reyes's DEA contact. They had been told to keep their distance until the arrest was made. Now, they were filming everything. Flashing cameras lit up the street. Anna stayed inside, watching from behind the counter. She didn't move. She couldn't. The adrenaline still rushed through her veins. Everything had happened so fast, but it had worked. Ortega was in custody. The diner, though messy and broken, was still standing. Her co-workers, confused and scared, stayed in the back room. Anna breathed out slowly and leaned against the wall. For the first time in weeks, the weight she had carried started to lift. But her hands still wouldn't stop shaking. Inside the van, Reyes removed his headphones and leaned back in relief. "It's done," he said. The operation had taken weeks of planning, years of waiting, and the courage of one woman who refused to stay silent. One of the agents turned toward Anna, still behind the counter. He walked over quietly, knelt down beside her, and said in a calm voice, "It's over. You did it." Anna nodded, her eyes still wide. She felt like she was floating, her thoughts scattered. Dishes lay broken around her. Coffee had spilled across the table. But in the middle of the mess was the truth. She had brought down the ghost. As the room cleared, one agent looked around at the chaos, the broken glass, the stunned workers, and said quietly, "She brought down a ghost." No one replied. No one needed to. The moment spoke for itself. For years, Ortega had disappeared without a trace. But today, the truth had unfolded. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Anna sat in the back room of the diner while Reyes spoke to her gently. The other agents took photos, gathered evidence, and cleared the area. Ortega had been taken to a secure vehicle and driven out of town. News reports were already playing on TV screens. Notorious drug lord captured in small diner. El Fantasma found hiding in Arizona. Mystery waitress helps end decade-long manhunt. Anna heard the words, but didn't fully feel them yet. Her mind was still stuck in that one moment, when Ortega reached inside his coat and time froze. She could still hear the gunshot. Still see the fear in his eyes. He wasn't invincible. He wasn't magic. He was real. And now, he was caught. Anna didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired. But somewhere deep inside, she knew she had done the right thing, even if it had scared her. Later that afternoon, the diner closed early. The manager gave Anna the rest of the week off. Outside, people had gathered, pointing at the windows, whispering stories. A news truck sat parked near the curb. Police tape surrounded the building. But inside, It was quiet again. Anna sat in her car, hands on the steering wheel, not ready to drive. She looked at her phone and saw a message from her mother. The kids were safe and happy. They didn't know anything had happened. That made her smile. Reyes walked over and knocked gently on her window. She rolled it down. "You good?" he asked. Anna nodded. "Tired, but okay." He handed her a small envelope. "Officially, you're anonymous. No press. No credit. But the people who matter, they know what you did." Anna looked down at the envelope. Inside was a handwritten thank you from the DEA. She didn't need a medal. Just peace. And now, she finally had it. The story of Javier Ortega's arrest spread across the country like wildfire. By nightfall, nearly every major news outlet had picked it up. Television screens flashed bold headlines: "Vanished cartel kingpin captured by Waitress informant." News anchors called it one of the most unexpected takedowns in recent DEA history. The footage of Ortega being dragged out of the small Arizona diner played on a loop. The story had all the parts reporters loved: mystery, danger, courage, and an ordinary woman doing something extraordinary. But through it all, one name stayed missing: Anna Cruz. At her request, the DEA left her identity out of the reports. No pictures. No interviews. No fame. She didn't want attention or praise. She just wanted to go back to her quiet life. To keep walking her kids to school. To keep serving coffee in peace. That choice surprised many, but it also made her story even more powerful. The DEA offered Anna something most people would have taken without question: witness protection. A new name, a new home, and full government support to disappear just like Ortega had. They told her it was the safest option. That some members of Ortega's cartel might still be out there. Anna thought about it seriously. She looked at her children sleeping. She walked through her home one last time. But in the end, she said no. She didn't want to run. She didn't want to live in hiding. She had already lived in fear for long enough. Instead, she made a simpler request: keep her name off the record, keep her family safe, and let her stay in the town she called home. The DEA agreed, though reluctantly. Reyes supported her decision. She faced the ghost, he told his team. She can handle the rest. Quietly and without fanfare, Anna returned to her everyday life. But while Anna was stepping back into normalcy, the world around her was changing. Ortega's arrest shook the criminal underworld. His capture led to a chain reaction of sweeping cartel arrests across Mexico and the southern United States. The DEA and Mexican authorities reopened dozens of cold cases. They raided abandoned storage yards, seized trucks, and followed paper trails that had once gone cold. Ortega's hidden operation, which had quietly survived for years, began to fall apart. The fear that had kept people silent for so long started to fade. Smaller leaders who once used Ortega's name to protect themselves were arrested within weeks. Hidden cash houses were uncovered. Stolen vehicles and weapons were traced back to long-forgotten raids. Ortega's name, once a legend in the shadows, now stood as a symbol of collapse. The cartel he had built so carefully, so quietly, had finally started to crumble, not in a war, but with a waitress and a wire. In court, Javier Ortega remained silent. He did not speak during his arrest. He said nothing during the hearings. He sat behind glass with a calm face and empty eyes. Lawyers tried to delay the trial, but the evidence was overwhelming. His voice had been recorded. His face had been filmed. His routes, storage yards, and coded language had all been exposed. The case moved fast. There were no long speeches. No surprise witnesses. Ortega said nothing to defend himself. It was almost as if he had already accepted it. The judge sentenced him to multiple life terms without parole. His only response was a slow blink. No apology. No emotion. The trial, once expected to take months, became a formality. When it ended, Ortega was flown to a maximum security prison where he would never be seen again. The ghost who once ruled the border was now a prisoner, quiet, locked away, and forgotten. Back home, Anna slipped back into her routine. Or at least, she tried to. She returned to the diner the following week, wearing the same uniform and apron. The cracked booths and humming ceiling fans hadn't changed. The coffee machine still sputtered. But something felt different. Customers looked at her longer than usual. Some nodded in respect. Others whispered behind menus. A few avoided her altogether. People in town had heard the rumors. They didn't know all the facts, but they knew Anna had something to do with what happened. Some called her brave. Others warned their kids not to ask questions. Even though the news never used her name, it was a small town, and small towns don't keep secrets for long. Anna didn't correct anyone. She didn't explain herself. She just served meals, wiped tables, and kept her eyes on the door. Every now and then, she would feel eyes on her back, but she stayed calm. Some days were harder than others. There were times when she would wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, remembering the sound of the gunshot in the diner. Other times, she would see a man with a beard walking down the street and freeze for a moment before realizing it wasn't Ortega. Her kids helped keep her grounded. They didn't know the full story, only that Mom had helped stop someone very bad. That was enough. Anna walked them to school every morning, holding their hands a little tighter than before. She smiled at neighbors. She paid bills. She cooked dinner. Life didn't go back to what it was, but it moved forward. She didn't expect medals. She didn't want interviews. She just wanted peace. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had it. And even if some people were afraid of what she had done, she had no regrets. A few weeks later, Anna walked into the diner early. The place was still dark, and the chairs were stacked on tables. She unlocked the door, turned on the lights, and started brewing the first pot of coffee. Then she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She walked to booth 5, sat down alone, and stared out the window. The same booth Ortega had used every Thursday morning. The same booth where everything had started. She sat there quietly, listening to the hum of the lights, the soft gurgle of the coffee machine, and the faint sounds of the town waking up. It was peaceful. In that moment, she thought about everything that had happened, the danger, the fear, the silence, and the choice she had made. She didn't feel like a hero. She just felt like herself. A mother. A waitress. A woman who saw something wrong and did something about it. Outside the diner, life went on. Trucks rumbled down the road. The border still stood miles away. People still came and went. But one thing had changed. A dangerous man had been caught, and a small town had played its part. Anna continued to work quietly. She never answered questions from reporters. She never confirmed the rumors. But people knew. And more importantly, she knew. She knew what she had done, and why she had done it. She knew what it meant to stand up when it mattered. She never asked for thanks. She never asked for help. She just did the right thing, even when it scared her. That's the kind of justice the world doesn't always see. No badge. No courtroom. No headlines. Just a woman in an apron, paying attention, doing her job, and changing everything without anyone noticing, until it was already done.